Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Breast Cancer Podcast. We are very excited today. We have Pastor Jennifer Jackson with us here today. She has her own podcast, and she does a lot of things serving the community and serving the women of Columbus, Ohio. I'm a big fan of her, and so welcome, Jennifer.
I'm a big fan of you as well, Dr. Hella Harvey and Monica. It is such a privilege. It's an honor to be here. I can't believe we're here. 2 years past diagnosis and surgery and all of that. But yes, I work mainly with women.
Yes.
I have a radio show called Simply for Women. So I have that's my biggest heart is for women. And I serve in the local church, in the community, lots of community outreach. We do all sorts of things from, helping make meals to providing clothing and, those practical things. I do teach. And I have an orphanage in Kenya, so that's been my big project for 10 years.
Who in the world could ever say those words? That's amazing to hear someone say that.
It's so much fun. It's a dream come true. This April, I'm taking 21, mostly women, on a trip to open the orphanage. Yeah. So I have lots of things here and there and yon going on.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm really excited to meet you as well because Dr. Hella Harvey has said so many wonderful things about you. She was on your podcast as a guest. I think that's when I first heard about you. But you'd also mentioned that you're about 2 years out from surgery. You'd mentioned that earlier to us. Is that about right?
That's correct. February of 21, I had a double mastectomy. And then following that, I had chemo and immunotherapy for a little over a year.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you're here to talk about joy, like how to find joy, because, it's hard when you get that diagnosis, you go through treatment, you're really in survival mode. Like, what's the next thing I have to do to live? And sometimes that can suck the joy out of our lives, and it can leave us in a state of, how do I manage my feelings? How do I get through this? What are things that are in my control as well? And Dr. Hella Harvey, when she talked about you, she's like, Jennifer would be the perfect person to come share some inspiration with our audience. And so maybe we could start talking about some practical things that survivors can do to help get them through, whether it's cancer or any other time. So this is really, it could apply to anybody. Let's hear it.
Joy doesn't mean there isn't pain. And I do want to talk about that as well. So it doesn't mean that there's a lack of suffering. But I think the gift in all of this to me was I actually sat down and really thought about, what does bring me joy? How can I keep that going? And actually wrote a book, Simply Joy, Rain or Shine, because we're all going to face hard things. All of us have different levels of suffering and difficulty. And we want to maintain that joy, because once you start down a rabbit hole of depression or darkness, it's a long climb out. And so it's better to maintain a life of joy. And I thought about this famous verse in the Bible, and this is, I guess, the pastor in me coming out. But Psalm 23, you've probably heard it at a funeral or something, but it's really for the living. It's for now. And David says, because the Lord is my shepherd, I have everything I need. He lets me rest in meadow grass and leads me beside quiet streams. He gives me new strength, and he helps me do what honors him the most. And even though walking through the dark valley of death, I will not be afraid, because you are close beside me, guiding all the way. And I think about that. God is with you. God is with us, and he loves us even in the difficult times. And that's one of the ways that we can gain joy, is knowing that we aren't alone, that we're never alone, and that we have him with us. And I've, as a pastor's wife and as a woman's pastor, I've literally been on hundreds, maybe thousands of hospital visits and home visits, and sat with people in these dark places. And I know that we have to find joy on those journeys. And it says in Nehemiah 8:10 that the joy of the Lord is our strength. And that's what I found. And I found different ways to express that joy and to grab hold and not let it go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, joy is so important, but a lot of changes happen through a diagnosis. Like, even relationships change. Like, you learn a lot. And I always say I received so much clarity through cancer with some of the people that were closest to me. And I would get discouraged also, though. Like, man, I really thought this person was going to show up, and they didn't, and it hurts. But, like, how can I still maintain that joy in those types of ways?
I still have people that to this day haven't ever made a call or a card, and I thought they would at least acknowledge something.
Wow.
But maybe some people don't know, and they don't know how. I had to look at the loved ones that I had, and I had to be the one to say, I'm going to love them. I'm going to text them. I'm going to hug them. I'm going to go to them. I actually made a list. I'm a big list maker, but I wrote out a list of who are the ones that I love in my life. Wow. And some of them, I've sent them multiple texts. And if I don't get one in return, that's okay, because I love them and I go toward them.
Is there come a point though where you stop texting them after a while? Okay.
Yeah, some you have to let go. I think you have to let go of the toxic people in your life. Yeah. It is not a time for negativity. Right. Yeah. Especially when you're going through cancer, you just can't. And so I've let go of some. Yeah. And there's others, you have people that they try to dictate to you how you should do this or that, or tell you what it should look like. And I had to let some of those go as well. Yeah. Part of life in the fishbowl as a pastor is everyone is watching you, and they all want to put their input into how you should be living your life. And I had to create a team. And on that team were my sister and my parents and my husband. And then I had some friends on my team, doctors on my team, and I get to pick the team.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's helpful. And that was something I realized afterward. Like, I needed a core team. My ride or die. I hate to say the word die, but like the ones that are going to be there unconditionally. Yes. And everything outside of that was just a bonus. Once I realized that, like, so that I'm not setting up expectations for this person, said they were going to be there and they weren't on my list. Yeah. So I can let that go.
That's right.
And now I have a little bit of more clarity into where I spend my energy. Because I was giving. And then it came time I had cancer. I'm like, where are they? Yeah. And I had to just let go and realize they're not my ride or die like I thought it was. Yeah. But I still was so supported. Like, I didn't need their support necessarily. Yeah. I wanted it, but I had everything I already needed to get through that.
And new friends as well. Totally. I learned to make it's a new opportunity to gather some new people in your life, to reach out to a different group of people, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I always think, though, on the same note, where in my life I felt that too, where I was always there for this person and going above and beyond. And I'm a very affectionate person, so I feel like sometimes I expect the same thing back from people, but not everyone can give back the same way. But what I have noticed in my own situation is the people that I thought would show up didn't show up, but then it's almost like God sent different people in my life that showed up at the time that I needed them.
You got what you needed. In reality, we just didn't get it from who we thought we were, and that's okay. Yeah, it's almost like the golden rule. Yeah, you just didn't get it from where you thought, but you still had everything you needed. In that moment, and I think that's a great way to look at things as well, to find that joy.
Yeah, it is a season to take a personal inventory time, and I kind of an audit of all your people. And I did that, and I forgive quickly, as fast as I can, and as as those thoughts come up to my mind, that person wasn't there, that person didn't send flowers, or that person, I could have died, and maybe they would have shown up at the funeral and said, oh, that was so sad, and then, hey, where are we going for lunch? And you think about those things. But because you think about those things, you can let those people go, bless them in your heart, bless them in your mind, and then say, God, who do you have? Who do you have for my life? And fill those empty spaces with the people that are there for you. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And it is so surprising. Sometimes people you never think would be there for you will be there for you. Right? It is really surprising. I think the people's true character does come out too at that time. I always tell my husband, who are the people we can call in the middle of the night if something were to happen? And it was funny, like, I had like 4 or 5 people. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's all we have. And I think it's important to think through those things as, who will pick up the phone at 2 a.m. if, you have a heart attack or I have a heart attack or, whatever. Like, I think it does make you think about those things that you did not think before the cancer diagnosis.
And grace for some people that they don't know what
to
say.
Know.
And it doesn't mean they're not in your people. Yeah. They just honestly are either they're so upset or they're hurting themselves and they don't know. And that doesn't mean that they don't love you or care about you.
Yeah. I mentioned on my own YouTube channel, I did this little short video, but I realized that every survivor, maybe it's every person, needs patience, forgiveness, and grace for other people and yourselves, because people are going to say the wrong thing. Oh yeah. They have good intentions, but it comes off the wrong way. Yeah. I've done that, and I've learned so much on how to support people through my own cancer diagnosis. Like, I probably did those things to people and said ignorant things, but it's like I have to be patient with myself, allow myself grace, and forgive myself and also other people. Like, they just don't know. Yeah. And that's okay. Like, we just need to be patient with them, and in their own time, hopefully they will evolve to that point of like, oh, now I know how to show up for someone. Now I know what support looks like.
Yeah.
So
I think also there's joy in a relational God, that you have God as one of your top relationships. And I know I'm supposed to say that as a pastor, but it's very important, and he's available to you. I always say that God invites us to take him off our to-do list and to simply be with him. He's very relational, and he wants to be with you. It's not a checkbox thing that I have to do. It's that God is with you, and he offers so many benefits. He is a healer. He is a miracle worker. He is available. He's faithful and good and kind. And sometimes we just don't understand him, and we're mad at him, and we have questions for him. And he can handle that. He's a good father, and it's okay. So we can talk to him and tell him all of those things, because it's almost like food poisoning. If we hold in the negative emotions that we feel against God, it's like food. So it's best to get it out and to talk to him, just to be honest. So, prayer is simply talking to God. And if we can be honest with God and say, I'm really upset about this and everything that happened, and just talk it through with him, you'll find a great new level of peace. I think that's a good thing.
Jennifer, let me ask you this. Do you ever worry about the past or the future? Like, so, oh my gosh, I should have done this better, or I didn't do this. I wasn't a good mom. I didn't show up for my daughter's games, or, I'm worried about future. Will I have a job? Like, those are the things I think sometimes take up our energy. Do you think having God as your focus, that keeps you in the present? Like, do you feel that way?
I love talking to him about that. I think you should go back over your past with the Lord. And if there's something that you did feel that was a failure, tell him, I just wish this would have been better, but I can't change it. I love talking to him about all my past failures, which are many. and then in the future say, God, I don't want to get ahead of you or behind you. I want your direction. I want your guidance. Walk me through this. And there's a peace in that. And with breast cancer, the big thing you do have to face is, what if I did die? And I know that's a question a lot of people don't even want to think about. And I didn't want to think about that question. And it's normal to wrestle that down. And wrestle that down with the Lord is a beautiful thing.
I do think oftentimes, obviously, we talked about this earlier, is when you get told that you have breast cancer, or any kind of cancer for that matter, you lose control. But the funny thing about control is we never had control to start with, right? It's a fallacy. We think we have control over everything. We can control our kids, what they become, how they grow up, and what they do, and our lives and things like that. We never had control. And in my daily life as a surgeon, I'm, perfectionist. I need things to go perfectly. It's not acceptable not to, but as a human, end of the day, I'm still a human being. So it's hard for me to let go of that control. But I think it's good for me to then, tell my God that I can do what I can do, and I can control those things, and things that I can't control, it's for you to help me with that. And so that has helped me. And when I talk to my kids, I say that there are things you can't control, so give it to God. And there are things you can control. You can work hard to get straight A's, don't watch too much TV, or don't go with your friends, those are things you can control, but give your 100% and then let, God help you. So.
Oh, absolutely. And he is our strength, isn't he? And joy is a strength. And so I always say that joy can even come through suffering. The hard can cause a focus toward good.
Tell me more. Let's talk more. I need to hear this, so let's talk more about that.
Well, we can't deny that it's real, that there's decisions to be made, that there's pain, that you're taking Tylenol, you're, whatever, you can't deny that. I had surgery this week, but so I can choose lemonade, but some days I ate raw lemons without sugar.
Sounds pretty awful.
This is the reality. But when we are desperate, I think that God can move in a greater way. And when we cry out to him, that he answers. He's a comforter. I even read through the book of Job, and I think that's a great homework assignment. But, to dream a little bit in the middle of suffering is good. To say, okay, how do I want to spend my time? How do I, what is going to get my energy? Maybe I only have limited energy this week because I've had surgery, I'm in a treatment, I've had chemo, I've had whatever, but what's going to get priority? And so for me, that was actually motivating. And there was a pinpoint focus to say, okay, well, this is what I want to do. And sometimes suffering can actually focus your life to the right things. I think about a woman that I met when I lived in Israel. Her name was Hilwa. She was blind, and she had a house of hope for orphaned special needs children. And by the time I met her, she was in her 90s, and she would take inspirational magazines for women that were positive, and she would translate them into Braille. And those magazines were sent all throughout the Middle East to offer hope to women.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, you think of someone that was blind, but she did all of that. And so sometimes in suffering, it focuses you. What are you going to do? What is your calling? What is your purpose? What is your plan? What does matter most? What do you not want to do? What is negative to get rid of? How do you not want to waste your time anymore? And so for me, that part of it has been refreshing. I wanted to write a book. I wanted to do a podcast. I wanted, I had a list of things. I wanted to finish the orphanage. I had been working on the orphanage for 10 years. And I said, no, this year it will be finished.
Do you think your cancer played a role in that?
I do.
Yeah.
I think in the
and
hard
those are like blessings of cancer. It's like an oxymoron, right? Like, I think Monica brings this up sometimes. Like, I think somewhere I said cancer was a gift to me, or maybe you said that.
No, you did.
I did. Yes.
I was like, oh, really?
I feel like a gift right now, but it might be.
Yeah. But I think so that may be hard for people to hear right now, but it depends on where you're at.
What bit from your diagnosis?
Exactly, because you have to be in the right place to hear and accept that.
Sure.
Because as you're going through it, no way this is a gift, and you're hurting and you're in pain and you're bald or you're going through surgery.
Yeah.
But you have the choice on how you want to view things as you evolve through the diagnosis.
Yeah.
And you're right. You had said it was a gift, and it didn't ever sound right. I was like, what? She is crazy and she's my surgeon. But then it's like, oh, now I get it. And the gifts of cancer, not that cancer is a gift, and I don't want to say that, but the good things that come from it, and the passions that are reignited, and the nudges that you needed to get these things done and to really live your life and make a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah.
So
I think one thing I've noticed, like for all three of us sitting here, I think it's common, is we have this deep desire to make a difference in this world before we're dead and gone. I mean, one thing that's given is we're not going to be here forever, right? So that's a given. But I think what cancer does is there is a definite time that you're not going to be here, and we don't know when that is for any of us. But every minute that we live, I think it like you want to be purposeful. You want to live with an intention, and you're finishing up an orphanage and making sure it's ready for people to serve people. And you just made this, this is going to happen now. And I think you just have more of an urgency to do those type of things as a result of the diagnosis. It's really tough to explain, but I think that's true for many of us who have gone through this diagnosis. So
I think that you can also find in a suffering place joy in the tiny little things. It might be a popsicle on the way home. It might be, I get to watch the British baking show tonight. I mean, that sounds simple, but there are some small things that I learned to find joy in that I would have thought were not important or a waste of. I mean, my bird feeder outside my window, I enjoy that. I enjoy just hugging my husband. I enjoy some smaller things that I took for granted in the past. And so maybe your goals right now are very limited. So when we got home from chemo, we would watch the British baking show. And then this year, as I'm feeling better, I did a lemon raspberry cake for my daughter-in-law for her birthday, just for fun. So that's a tiny goal. But you can have, and maybe your gifts are different or your creativity is different. You want to paint, you want to, I don't know, read a book that I was watching All Creatures Great and Small. Because it's clean, it's fun. It was animals and you can see scenery of England. And, what is something that would be life-giving to you?
Right.
There's joy in creation. Maybe it's time to get a puppy while you're going through treatment. Seriously.
I always say to keep your eyes open. Because there are so many things that we would have just taken for granted, like the popsicle. But now it's like you have an appreciation for all of these things, or the birds out the window. It's just, you have to be intentional about that, though. Otherwise, you're just going to sink back into who you were before cancer and just taking things for granted without realizing it. So I think that's a really great point to just enjoy those small things. that are really actually big things.
They are. Intentionally enjoy those.
Absolutely.
So I also joy in serving God and serving others. You might think, well, this is not a time for serving, but I had to choose to not become internal, to not self-implode, because
Focus
it
on others.
feel like it's all about you at the moment. And you have to say, no, it's not all about me. And I am going to still, as fiercely as I fought to live, that's the intensity that I want to serve God and others.
Yeah.
That same fight that you have in you to fight through this and to push through this, I want to give that away to others. And I think that brings joy. Otherwise, you can get stuck in your head, stuck in your body, stuck in these decisions.
There is no greater privilege than service, I think. Through my journey too, one of my biggest passions is serving the community, serving my patients, serving my family. Sometimes we forget our own family. We are supposed to serve them too. And I make it a priority to do those things. And it does bring me such a joy. I know I can go buy a million purses or a million shoes. My husband will tell you I have a million shoes, but it really quite doesn't bring me as much joy as serving people, And so, and I was telling Monica earlier today, you're this wonderful pastor who has great sermons. You're such women-centered, serving women, orphanages in Africa. So what is in the future for Jennifer Jackson, Pastor Jennifer Jackson?
Oh, I just love people.
Yeah.
I love being with people. I love especially inspiring women, encouraging them, hugging them, praying with them, letting them know that there's hope, that God is with them, that He's real, He cares, He sees you, He sees your pain.
Yeah.
He has a hope and a future for you.
And I think joy is such a small word, but such a big thing.
Such a big thing.
Yeah, but what are just some simple, practical ways we can find joy? I mean, you mentioned those things of just enjoying the things in front of you and not taking them for granted. What are some other practical ways that we can just fill our lives with joy, do you feel?
Well, I think that you can spend time with God. And I know that may sound simple, but if you will talk to God, that brings me great joy, because there's so many decisions to be made. There's so much pressure. There's always a concern about this or that. And when you talk it through with God, He has the greatest wisdom and He has the greatest joy. So for me, prayer is number one. It really does change your life. But I think that going outside, being in nature, taking a walk, choosing to hug those necks of the cute kids and the people in your life, that's important.
The physical touch is so important.
Yeah, look at who you are. What do you enjoy? How are you designed, and what brings, you can literally feel if something is bringing you life or sucking that energy away from you. And God made you that way. I like to read a magazine about house decorating. Somebody else might not. But for me, taking just 10 minutes to do that was fun. That was good, clean fun for me. Yeah. So what fits you? You're important. You matter. Your life, every detail is covered. And do some things that you just actually enjoy doing. Maybe you're struggled with sleep because of breast cancer, but you could say, I'm going to light a candle. I'm going to use my diffuser. I'm going to read that magazine. I'm going to do a sleep app. I'm going to take a bath, make this a fun experience.
Yeah.
I know that sounds simple.
Small things are big things.
But what I hear is you need to take action. Yeah. And that's what I talk a lot of, or think a lot about thriving. Like, we hear the word thriver after breast cancer, but you can't simply coast along in survivorship and expect it to be like, I'm doing better.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to take that action mentally, physically, in a tangible way. Yes. Like, you have to be willing to do the work to find the joy. Whether, like you mentioned, if that was praying. That takes work. I mean, not a lot of work, right? But it's like, it's an intentional thing you're doing. So from what I hear, it sounds like, yes, you can be joyful after diagnosis, but you have to be willing to put the work in and recognizing that.
Yeah.
Yes. I put together scripture cards so it's easy just to read those when you're kind of not feeling really great. But I think also to say no to the lies that come to your mind, because that's a gift to yourself. You just get bombarded with lies of fear and anxiety and that pain, all those things. And just to say, no, I will not entertain this. I'm not going to nurture and nurse all these negative thoughts.
Like
I'm going to say no.
Right? Like fear is one that comes up. So the more you think about it, the more you're giving that attention and power over you. And you say no to that. Like, no, I'm not going to think about this.
Yeah.
And don't do it.
Do you also feel like, having gone through this diagnosis and surgeries and complications and all those things, now you have developed this muscle of resilience, like, I can get through this, I can get through anything? Do you feel that sense of confidence, both of you guys?
I think you do. I think you do feel some strength. And they were putting an IV in me recently, and the girl said, "Oh man, I couldn't find your vein, and that's going to hurt." And I thought, "Oh no, that doesn't hurt." I mean, for me, because you've been through other pain, that maybe it hurts a little, but not that much. And so you're stronger.
I think about the different situations I've been in throughout my life and the traumas that we experience, and yes, it makes you stronger. Yeah, same thing. Like, they couldn't find a vein in the hospital, and I'm like, it's okay.
It's not a big
deal. And they're
deal.
apologizing. I'm like, no, really, it's okay. Like, I have been through worse.
That's right.
And it just keeps things in perspective.
It does.
About who you were, who you are now, and those little things, they don't matter as much. So, how about you? Do you feel like you're
I definitely think I've developed the muscle of resilience. The one thing I have super advantage of being a breast surgeon is I see my patients, I know their stories, and I know how each person bounces back with their diagnosis. Every person is different in the stage and what type of treatments they go on. But since Jennifer is here, I would have to tell a story without crying, hopefully. But so she had her surgery, breast surgery, and then she needed chemotherapy. So I had to place infuse a port. Essentially, you had one of those too for chemotherapy. So whenever any type of procedure, there's complications, there's bleeding, infection. With this type of procedure, your lung can collapse. It happens extremely rarely, 1 in 1,000. In all these years of doing it, I may have had it happen a couple of times in the entire lifetime. And so I did that procedure for her. Her vein was difficult to find. It took me a little longer. I told that to her husband. And when we got an x-ray, everything looked fine. We usually get an x-ray to make sure the port is in the right position and the lung looks okay, and everything did. And she went home. But I knew that procedure was difficult. I was worried about this lung collapsing. The medical term is called pneumothorax. For her,
because it was difficult to find.
Yeah, her vein was kind of much deeper. Okay. And so I was worried about it, just a little bit back of my head, even though the x-ray was fine and everything. And it just so happened next day I text her, "Hey, how are you doing? Are you doing okay?" Because I've been thinking about her. She's like, "I'm having a hard time breathing." And I'm like, oh my gosh, I knew exactly what that meant. A day after the procedure, if you're having a hard time breathing, then you worry about lung collapsing. So they said, you need to go to the emergency room right now. So she went to the emergency room, and I met her. And of course, the x-ray showed that the lung was collapsed, and she was in severe pain.
Oh my gosh.
And of course, you don't, like I said, as a surgeon, we are such control freaks, and we want everything to go perfectly. This was anything but perfect. And it was devastating for me in my own mind. And also, I'm very sensitive to the fact I've had complications myself from my own surgery and had, treatments, and it suffered as a result of complications. I'm pretty sensitive to that. It was so hard to watch her in pain. But both her and her husband, Pastor Doyle Jackson, were so kind, so gracious, and so forgiving. And, she had to get a chest tube in. And this was during COVID time. No one would let, she could not have any visitors. It was just not a great time. But the way that she handled the situation, even till this day, I think about it and I'm like, she gave me so much grace and forgiveness. I mean, not that I was doing this on purpose. It's just as a result of the procedure, it can happen. But every time I think of it, it gives me chills. It really does. And the way you guys handled the situation was just amazing. And even though I felt like crap on the inside, you made me feel loved still.
You're very loved.
And so, I mean, I think of that. Then it taught me that I should forgive others. So that's what that taught me.
What a big lesson.
That's a lesson.
That.
Yeah. So those are that's an example of the different things I learned from different, I just recently had a stage 4 patient pass away. She has had stage 4 disease for the past 1.5 years. I've just watched her because I just become friends, and my patients become my family. And her service is next week, but I watched how she lived over the last 1.5 years. And she lived beautifully. She made every moment count. She spent a lot of time with her family and friends. She traveled, she read, shit. And so my patients really teach me how to live my own life.
Yeah.
if I were to get stage 4, I know exactly what I'm going to do. She like kind of showed it to me, what it feels like to have a quality of life. She had no regrets passing away. She knew when the time came. But I mean, just those lessons that I learn in a daily basis is so inspiring to me. And how special am I to be able to learn those lessons watching my patients? I just feel like it's such a gift for me.
One of the lessons I learned through the lung surgery was that once you do know what real pain feels like, for me, it gave me a whole new level of compassion for other people and the things that they go through. I thought I understood pain. After that, I felt it at a new level. And so I was able to really have a whole new perspective on loving people.
Well, I mean, same thing with joy, right? If you don't go through suffering, you're not going to understand joy. Like if you've never had any suffering, you don't know what it feels like to suffer. So,
and I think through all of this, and I've said this before, and I will always say it, you're looking at this with a lesson, and you're looking at this now with compassion. Again, a choice to where someone else could be like, look what happened to me. Because you can stay in that rage, anger, being upset, or you can say, now I know. Now I will have more compassion for others who have went through a painful experience. And that was a choice.
I think intentionality was the key word, because there were many moments where I thought, okay, I'm just going to go to bed. I could just cry myself to sleep right now. And I did do that a few times. And I think if you haven't had your good cry, you need to go have your good cry because you do have to acknowledge. But there are other times where I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And the other thing I'm not going to do is I can't wear out one particular person. I'm not going to wear out my husband with this or wear out a best friend with this. You have to put some limits in your life and say, and that's where I think prayer is key. You can never wear out God with all the things that you want to talk about, but you need your safe people. You need your safe people, and then you can experience joy in the midst of that. Just try not to wear them out is one of my lessons I learned.
No, that's great. Pastor Jennifer, thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast today. And maybe just what's some closing encouragement you could give our listeners and our viewers on YouTube if they're going through a really tough time right now and having a hard time finding joy?
The psalm that comes to my mind is King David, where he said, when I am afraid, I put my trust in God. We're all, you are maybe afraid, or you are going to be afraid or have been afraid. It's okay. But let's put our trust in God, because he is your strength. He's an ever-present help in a time of trouble. He loves you so much. Don't underestimate that. And then just know that you are so valuable. You are so precious and so worth it, and that you are moving forward. It may not feel like it today, but you are moving forward. You do have people that love you. You are not alone, and that God is going to help you. He's going to be with you every single minute. And it may not always seem that way at the moment, but looking back, you will see that you're not alone.
Very well said. Monica, that was such an amazing podcast on joy. Joy is something, it's really tough to find sometimes, but Jennifer had such great pearls, and I admire her. She has such a heart and compassion for women and for serving the society, and I'm just such a fangirl of Jennifer.
Yes, it was such an honor to be here with Pastor Jennifer. Thank you. Just to hear your story and just the little nuggets you could help someone with and finding joy. It's just, even if it's taking one piece of this, find it, be intentional like Jennifer mentioned, and give back, be of service to people. How can you use what you've been through in a way to give back and to make this world a better place? And that's it for today. Thanks for watching and listening.
Bye.
Bye.